absolute stud of a turkey. That's freaking sweet. Sun's not quite up yet, but that's alright. I'm gonna start scouting. I'm gonna walk about 1.5 miles before I get to where I want to start. So this is gonna be a long trip, but this is why I get out here before sunlight, because it should be good visibility by the time I get back there. It's kind of unfortunate, but this trail went on about 500 yards further than I could see on the map. I'm going to look around and see if I see some sign. Obviously it's not over yet, but because of how open this is, I was expecting bedding to only be if it can get away from the trail, or if a buck can find a super good monitor on the trail, which this point might have, because that is the wind direction that he would probably bed it on, and that is where the trail is coming from. So again, keep in mind, where is he smelling? He's trying to smell this access. Might make a good case for this point. So now that I'm at the end of this trail, I'm going to be walking exclusively that 1/3 elevation. I might pop up if I see some sign, but that's about it. So it's kind of hard to tell, but right here is a buck bed, and one easy indicator is the big old clump of poop in it that's been smashed down a bit. If this were pretty much any other time of year, you'd probably see hair in it. What you can't do is you can lift up some of these leaves and dig through, but it's pretty barren. Here's the hair, very buried in here. Let me get that in there. That's a hair there. Kind of hard to see. That was buried in there. It's a pretty good sized bed, honestly. Carries pretty wide. But you can tell that right now it's a little thin, but all of these small trees you see are buckthorn. So this is probably going to be a lot thicker during the season. You can tell that he's sitting here. Wind coming over the top, right where the access trail is. It's coming over his back. He's sitting on this leeward side catching a thermal up here, smelling anything that's below him as well. So this is certainly a decent spot to be bedded for him. Don't see a whole lot of rubs, so I'm assuming this is going to be an earlier season bed. There's a little bit of rubbing going on here, but nothing too crazy, especially because of how open this is and how open it'll be even at rut time. I think this is going to be an early season bed. It just makes more sense. The bucks really like that thick above, open below kind of cover. As you can see, it wasn't terribly thick there. It'll be a little thicker during the early season. And I thought maybe there's a bed here, but honestly, with the way these branches are twisted off, it might just be a scrape. So I walked up here and I looked down. I thought, hey, I didn't know that little shelf was there. That looks like a much worn out bedding area. A little spot where a buck might sit. And if you think about it, this little ridge is slightly open, but with that drop off right here, which I'll show you guys closer, it is kind of creating a thick above. It's creating a natural visual barrier. So nothing can see him, but at the same time he can smell it. And it's on a little more of that 1/3 elevation, because there's a bit of a drop off there now. So it makes it a little more ideal for bedding. So I'm going to go check that out for you guys real quick. Come up here, and there it is. There's the bed. So I'm going to go walk into it, and I'm going to show you guys how this works. So right here is that ridge I was talking about. That's what I was just standing on. That's his thick above. It's really just a visual barrier to where he's at. I'm going to walk down this bed and show you guys what this buck is doing here. See, it's terribly thick all around this. We got a lot of thorns and stuff here. This bed is pretty much devoid of them. It's pretty open. You can see the old buds are chewed off on that. Stuff is chewed off there, with the exception of those new buds growing. It's got this tree they often do with where they sit and they look around the tree, so he's looking down below. This way. He's got the wind coming over his back up here. So it's a little bit smaller of a bed than I typically really key on, but it is so low. There's not a whole lot in the area in the close proximity to this, so I do believe it's a buck bed. It's also in an intelligent location. You can look down here, smell everything below and above. Definitely a good spot, kind of in this thermal tunnel area. We're going to go from here, and we're going to see if we can't trace his route out and find some sign, so we can get an idea of how big this buck might be. So now before I look for sign, I'm going to do everything I can to determine what time of year this buck is bedding, and take as many clues as I can. So first off, it's a little more open here, so that's pointing me to say early season. There's not a lot of aggressive rubs around, just in the immediate proximity, so I don't think this is necessarily rut. Plus, with the wind he's bedding on coming over that ridge, there's not really much doe bedding up there. So I'm going to, again, point towards early season or possibly late season because it's on a south-facing slope. But I'm really thinking it's early season because there's not a lot of fresh sign in here right now. So all those factors are pointing me towards early season. There's oak flats up there, so there'll be plenty of food for him around here, even though we're far from agriculture. So again, I'm thinking early season here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take out my Onyx. I'm going to mark my location, and I'm going to put it in my early season folder. And then I'm going to wait to put it into a mature or young or just generic buck folder, because I need to identify what sign is in the area to get a little better feeling, because this bed is not defined enough. There isn't like habitual sign of like worn out ground, or there isn't habitual rubs year to year to really tell me the size of this deer or the age of this deer. If there were tracks, I would use stuff like that too, but I'm going to go ahead and leave this unmarked on the age category, and then make up my decision based on what I see a little later on in this scout. Another thing I want to point out is I'm looking for rubs now. I can almost guarantee you that lone cedar is going to have a rub on it. The reason I'm able to mark off ridges sometimes is because I go to them first and I see if there is or isn't sign, where they would be in the PM, in the afternoon, at night. And if there isn't sign on those trees they should be at during the night, then I'm going to go ahead and write it off. So before I do anything else, I'm going to walk over there. And I am making a strong bet. Obviously I could be wrong here, but I am betting there's going to be a rub on that. I'm also going to keep in mind I want to walk on this trail that this buck does. So you can see this is his entry trail. It's a little more of a hook route. I'm going to look for some tree taps along the way, although it's kind of hard to see them this time of year. Yep, sure enough. Walking this 1/3, not on top of the ridge, on this 1/3. There's a rub, and a decent one, on this cedar tree here. Alright, I'm going to set this camera down and show you guys how I dissect this. You guys are downhill with me, and it's a very steep slope. He's rubbing it on this angle, but you guys are probably 2 arms length from me, so probably about 6 feet, and you're about 3 feet lower. So I know this buck is downhill, rubbing up at this. So immediately the average height isn't too high on me, but from where that buck is standing when he's rubbing it, that's a decently high rub. It's not incredibly high. I see some really high marks all the way up to here. It's not super aggressive, so I'm not immediately thinking rut, like I was saying. There are some deep gouges, which has been in the past a little more characteristic of mature deer, in this area at least. from behind on the backside, there's a little bit of rubbing too, so this might be a 2-year rub. Again, it's not super high, so it is a thicker tree. But I'm going to go ahead and say that this is probably a 3.5-year-old deer, just because it's a little bit thicker of a tree. It's not incredibly high, but it is a good height. It's not super torn up, but I think that's going to be a factor if he's actually bedding here during early season. He's not making this rub to mark aggressively and fend off other deer and such. I think this is more of his route out, and he's common, and this is a tree that's pretty ideal to rub in a place that he passes a lot, so he's going to rub it. They're following this trail. You can see some old tree taps. That's a little bit more on the rub side, actually. You can see an old rub. This one's a little bit lower than what I was seeing before, so it could be the same buck just a couple of years earlier. Everything else was open. It's starting to get really, really thick right here. And there's a rub there. There's a rub there. Pretty tall rub there. There's a rub there. There's a rub there. There's a rub there. There. Judging by the height of most of these, with the exception of that one right there, these are pretty young deer. Probably a 2-year-old. Just being aggressive, making a lot of sign. Another rub right there. For the height, as in the elevation, it's a little bit lower. I think it's a nighttime sign. Definitely during the rut. Again, not a place I'm going to sit, but one I'm definitely going to be aware of and possibly set a trail camera during the rut just to get a feel for what caliber of bucks are in the area. Again, just confirming, thick cover right here. A few rubs around it. You'll start to see these divots. Some doe beds there, smaller. This one's a bit larger. There's one over there that's a bit larger. There's one right here that's smaller. So like you see here, thick cover, lots of aggressive rubs around it. Probably a doe bedding area. Probably where bucks are going to be cruising downwind of it all throughout in the nighttime during the rut. If it was a little closer to buck bedding, I would probably be sitting downwind of this during peak rut or pre-rut, but it's not really close to where I think some bucks are bedding, so we'll probably get some immature buck travel here during the rut. I don't think anything really big is going to be around here, but beds of varying size relating to thick cover, not thermals and not access, most likely doe bedding. So I'm walking this bottom and I come across that trail there, this trail here, that trail there, and that entry trail to that topside bedding we found, all in one. So I'm going to label this as a trail junction. I'm going to use that white marking because it's not explicitly a deer sign. Obviously there are deer trails here. I'm going to use that white marking just so this sticks out. This might be an area that I really want to put a trail camera just because I know that this is probably used during the nighttime. I can tell from the way it's coming off of bedding, but also this being in the bottom, probably used during nighttime. When I'm in an area like this big woods that I'm in, and there's not anything for really ag fields, it's a little harder to find survey points where you can just get a feel for what deer are in the area. So this might be a good idea to put a camera here, figure out what deer are in the area, even if it's nighttime. I'm probably not going to be setting up here, but it's kind of the equivalent of putting a camera on the edge of an ag field in farm country where you know deer are going to be frequenting, even though it's at night. I'm just going to use this as a little bit of a survey spot, and I'm going to mark it in white because it's not explicitly deer sign, but it's something I want to really stick out on that map, so I'll remember to revisit. I'm going to go about this as I normally would. So first thing I'm going to do, because I have no experience with this property, is I'm going to look for some mature deer sign. So I'm going to go up to these cedars, these aspens, this area that I think there might lie a big rub. And if I don't see it, I don't see anything in most of the areas I'm looking, I'm going to start to mark off this ridge. If I do, I'm going to start to walk the 1/3 on the prevailing leeward side. Basically, I'm going to be on the leeward side for a west or northwest wind, and I'm going to be looking for the bed of that buck if the rub doesn't have a trail that leads me right to it. So on I go, going this way. I'm starting to see what I like. Jeez, This is a high rub, and it has been rubbed year after year. I'm going to see if I can't set you guys down real quick. Average height is about at the belly button here, reaching all the way up to my collarbone. That's crazy. He's coming here at the same time of year each year. There's probably a doe that comes into heat when he keys in on. Awesome. A lot of times you see bucks use areas like this year after year in a little 3-day stint. They'll go in a 3-day period where they use a certain area because they know a doe is going to be in heat. This time, some of the other properties I've had, it's been October 25th to 28th. Some of them it's been November 7th to 10th. Little areas like that. Days like that, but man, that is a really, really impressive rub. So that being said, after seeing that rub, and a few more like it, I'm going to start to transition to that 1/3 elevation and try to find his bed. Alright, so that didn't take long. Coming right over to this little point on the leeward side, if it was a northwest wind, we've got a stud rub again. Clear divot where you can see this bed would be. We got wind coming over the back, facing this way, and out and below. Got a slight adjustment. Right now there's actually doe bedding in here. It seems like. You can tell this is obviously a place where one beds. I would say this is a possible place for a rut bed. A lot of times you'll see a buck's rut bed will be a doe's habitual bed. Even during the rut, these bucks won't give up their advantage just to, be close to does. Be aware of where they're at. But that's impressive. Definitely marking these rubs and marking this as a possible rut bed. And this is one I'm very confident about. This is the real bed he's using. This one right here on this point. It's a pretty good size one. He's got all this stuff he's overlooking. He's catching thermals in all directions from below. He's got the wind coming over his back, and he's got a little edge here like we saw before to kind of give him thick above without actually having enough thick cover present. You can see probably a buck bed. He snapped off this piece of buckthorn. Probably was overhanging in there, getting in the way of his antlers. This is great. This is pretty textbook. Yeah, you can tell. You want to put yourself in position, see what he's seeing, think about why he's here. For me, he's here because access is coming from that direction. Doe bedding is in that direction. He's going to know long before if someone's here, because does are going to spook up, young bucks are going to spook up, like we saw before with the satellite bedding. He's also going to be able to smell when does are in heat during the rut. He's got an easy escape route. He's in that thermal tunnel where he can smell things below and above him in the morning at the same time. He's also got this little logging trail I walked up before, right here. It's kind of hard to pick out on camera. But he's got that. He can easily get down. You can see his little escape trail here. And you can easily get over there. Yeah, definitely a buck bed. So I'm going to mark this. This might be multiple times in the year, but I think when there's hot does above him, it strengthens the odds. And next, I'm going to find a wind that I can access this on that is not going to bump him out of this bed, and that will also guarantee that he's going to be in this bed. So I need to find something that's just off, and I'm going to find a tree that I can set up in. Alright, so the bed is down here. The wind direction when he's bedding there is going to be coming from here. And I'm planning on hunting him in the afternoon. So I know that because of his visual, how far he can see, maybe this stuff will be growing up a little bit, leaves on. Because of how far he can see though, I want to make sure I'm not super close. So at this bed, it's likely around 70 yards. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my tree on the edge of this steep drop, and I'm going to plan on that downhill thermal to help catch my wind. And I'm going to be in a just off wind, so one that's angling just slightly off of perfect, and that way he can exit here, come on this trail that he's going to exit on. Have the wind coming right where he wants to smell, where he's going. And if I sit in one of these trees over here, that's just a bit off of that wind. My wind's actually going to be going down. That's my alarm to go. My wind's actually going to be going down into this bottom. It's going to be sucked down into that bottom with the thermal, and it's going to be going just away from him. So I'm going to be able to probably sit in this tree right here and have a lane over here to that trail. So that's the plan. This is probably the early season sit. When the leaves are crunchier and stuff, I'm going to have to get a little further away. So what I'm going to do right now is actually mark this tree on onX, mark my location right at the bottom of the tree, and I'm going to take a picture of the tree too, so when I'm coming I recognize the foliage and the bark on it, so I know I'm in the exact tree I need to be in. And I'm also going to write in the notes how high up I want to be, whether it's 3 sticks, 4 sticks, or whatever. I was just thinking there's a pretty decent amount of hair in that bed, and the wind direction is actually right for him to be bedded there. And wow, did it come across some wide tracks. That's something I'm marking in dark blue. That's some certain sign. Mark of the time of year. And these are walking tracks. Look at that. I did access from that bottom, so he probably saw me coming and spooked. But I bet you he was there. This is actually extremely wide tracks. You can go ahead and follow these, see how he got out. Alright guys, so today I was just out here for about 2.5, 3 hours. Got an extra hour in because I got up early, but now I gotta head back to class. It was productive. I didn't get to all the spots I wanted to, of course. That pretty much never happens because of sidetracking and the land being a little more rough and coarse, and just planning to do more than you really can in the allotted amount of time. That being said, I'm going to get out here tomorrow. I'm going to take the things I learned today. I'm going to do some post scouting. I'm going to find out what areas worked, what didn't. I'm going to try to draw some patterns, and I'm going to pick out new spots to go to tomorrow. And then I'm going to get up early again and do it again. So it's not over yet, and I'm looking to learn some more information about this land. It's looking really promising from the amount of sign I saw and from the quality I saw in some of those areas. Some good sign today, some good bed finds, and a lot of information gained about how the deer are using this land.